I'm going to call on 3 people, 1 from each studio, to give basically, just 1 minute elevator pitch level description of one of the concepts coming out of the studios. I can sort of feel the tension building here. Then Julie is going to offer some reflections and perhaps some advice, and then we'll go out into the marketplace. Okay? So first up is the MasterCard and Norwegian Refugee Council studio, and here I'm going to call on George Hamilton from Unilever.
Good afternoon, everybody. Oh dear, there we go. So how about this for a headline? Mama Fatuma, 50, wins the inaugural 2020 Refugee Entrepreneur of the World Award. Or how about this cup? Not this visual identity, this cup, designed by a refugee entrepreneur. There are things that our team, our collective team, a wonderful team, wanted to see put into place. The problem we were trying to solve was allowing refugees or empowering refugees to provide for their own livelihoods. And the intervention point was creating of this connectivity, the marketplace, which we just heard of so eloquently today, allowing people to, as I say, fund their own livelihoods. The idea we had was essentially creating startup hubs or incubators. So for those who have seen Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, depending on where you are, that is the sort of thing we wanted to create. Allowing people to access a digital global marketplace with potentially answering briefs from companies such as my own to design or create or code or whatever we trained people to do. Or even solve local problems that are very pressing in their camps through innovative entrepreneurial ideas. So how do we fund this? We wanted to come up with the International Refugee Awards. Companies would sponsor these awards. This sponsorship money would then be plowed into the camps to fund these startup hubs or incubators. We would ask the employees of these companies to be the digital or even on the ground trainers, which I can tell you from a retention point of view would save me a lot of money. And then give the winners of these awards access to the marketplace that these companies can provide. So we are looking at a virtuous and virtual growth circle. Thank you very much.
I'll do the other 2 too. Okay, thank you, George. Thank you, and the rest of the studio team there. Next up then is Dag Ivar Brekke, who's from Innovation Norway and who was in the Statkraft studio. Cool.
Thank you. Here we go. The context of our work was decarbonizing transport, heavy transport at a scale. We started out flying high, but we think we landed on an idea which serves a cause and might have some potential. Our idea is the electrified, self-driving cargo caravan between Oslo, our capital, and Norway's largest port, which is Gothenburg, Sweden. The route is the E6 highway, Norway's main connection to the continent. It's a straight line of 4 lanes, heavily congested with more than 2,500 heavy trucks crossing the border every day. We envisage a system of electrified, self-driving units, like cabinless trucks, carrying containers linking together in trains and doing their journeys at night, powered maybe by an overhead line, onboard small battery for doing the last mile to and from the terminals at each end, and also for pulling the caravans between utilities, between grids. The speed will be optimized to arrive on time in the morning and to minimize the wear on the roads, of which you probably know these trucks are the main culprits, generating almost all the wear and tear of our large roads. It could be 30 to 50 kilometers an hour. It could work at night. And everything will be remotely operated and monitored. End users would be anybody who buys cargo services. Partners could be Nordic utilities, power companies, could be global logistics players, technology providers, and even road authorities who could benefit massively from maintenance savings. We think the Gothenburg-Oslo caravan is a perfect place to explore electrification and autonomous heavy transport. It will decarbonize a significant freight volume. It's scalable, and it opens up for a fascinating cross-Nordic and international cooperation. And I think the commercial potential, we think, is very, very interesting. Thank you.
Wow. And finally, we have from the Yara studio, Silja Lindahl, who's from Aker Biomarine and Sustainability Hub Norway. Silja.
Yeah. Thank you. So we named our concept Feed Your Kids' Brain. So it's a twofold solution where we're feeding their brain with the knowledge and awareness of what's healthy both for themselves and the planet, but also actually tracking their food journal from they're born. So it would be an interface in an app where parents can track the feed they're giving their children and get points for how healthy it is and get the training meanwhile. Then the kid at a certain age would get the app and the data tracked for them, and they would be part of logging their own food in a gamification. So they would have to link their motivation and self-interest in being healthy. So understanding that if you want to become a football player or a police officer, you need the food that makes your brain function well, that's healthy for you, and makes you strong. So actually triggering the motivation of our next generation to eating healthy. So to do this, we would create a coalition. It could be a new one or add on to an existing one on nutrition with food companies. Not only the best players today, but also companies like McDonald's and KFC to sort of make a shift. So they would provide discounts on healthy food only in this app. So you would actually build their future demand on healthy food. And then they would also have an incentive to shifting away from unhealthy foods into more healthy foods.
Excellent.
And we're starting today, so all the companies at Sinteo Exchange who could be interested in starting that sort of shift for a healthy diets for our kids and our future generation, come talk to us and Yara will be part of it, my company will be part of it. So we're gathering and we're starting here. Making a pilot in Mexico, as we know that's a country with a lot of obese children. So it's a great place to see if the app could work.
Fantastic. Well done. Julie, any thoughts?
Well, let's see. So starting with the first one, I think that one's near and dear to my heart for reasons you just heard about. And I think what's wonderful about you've thought about the marketplace, creating sort of a global access while having an on-the-ground footprint in the physical world. I think a lot of what I think marketplaces miss on today is that they go all digital, but don't think about sort of the on-ramps and the off-ramps for the physical world. And the fact that you've linked those two, I think, is really excellent. Also, it's just wonderful to imagine how kind of changing the brand of what it means to be a refugee to sort of a cohort of people that are viewed as contributors to society rather than as sort of a cost or a drain to society. So I think there's just a lot to be excited about there. I love that caravan, sort of the driverless car caravan. You know, a couple of things. The way you thought about this as you identified actually the physical location where you would sort of test this pilot. And that is a microcosm for sort of these kind of high traffic delivery routes all over the world. So you've got a very kind of a small scale experiment that you've identified very tangibly, but also kind of has global scale potential. Also, the idea of using starting at night is exactly how the Google driverless car tested. I remember running into them late at night on Highway 280, and it was sort of a freaky thing because they were doing these secretly. And actually, a good friend of mine who's a New York Times reporter sort of broke the story. But before you knew about it, you drive by and you see these cars where there were people in them, but nobody had their hand on the steering wheel. It was kind of a trippy experience. But so the fact that you kind of have thought about the specifics of the way that this would physically manifest, and in a way that's global scale, I think is real potential. The food app, I think, is fantastic for two reasons. One, you've thought about the gamification, which is sort of the how do you get, it's the equivalent. Oftentimes we're trying to get behavior change with technology products. It's the how do we get people to eat their spinach problem, and you literally have that problem of how do you get people to eat their spinach, the kids. So the gamification and linking that to sort of an aspirational outcome is really key. Also, I love your bias for action, because that's the way we do things in the Valley. It's like we don't talk about it, we just go start coding and we start trying it. We test our thesis right away and we figure out what we got right, what we didn't get right, and then we sort of iterate. So inspired by all three of these ideas, and I'd like to invest.
Fantastic. Thank you, Julie.